You have been to a funeral. You stood in a room that smelled like flowers and quiet. You watched people cry in ways they never cry anywhere else. You felt something pull at the inside of your chest, something you could not name. And you probably assumed that what you were watching, this ritual, this ceremony, this careful arrangement of the dead, was a human invention, a cultural tradition, something someone designed. But the real answer is far stranger. What you were watching was one of the oldest behaviors on Earth, older than language, older than farming, older, possibly, than the fully modern human brain. And the story of what your ancestors actually did with their dead reaches back so far, and becomes so strange that by the end of it, that chest pull you felt at the funeral will mean something completely different. Go back 300,000 years. You are not you yet. You are something close. Your skull is a little thicker. Your brow hangs lower. Your hands are calloused in ways that have no modern equivalent. But you love. You grieve. And when someone in your group dies, you do not leave them where they fall. This is the first thing that surprises researchers. Archaeologist Lee Berger and his team discovered something in a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star. Deep in the cave, in a chamber so narrow it required a special team of small-frame scientists to reach, they found the bones of Homo naledi. Not a modern human, a smaller, older cousin. And those bones were not scattered by predators or floods. They were placed, deliberately, carefully, placed in a remote chamber far from where the group would have lived or eaten. Berger and his colleagues published their findings in 2023, and the scientific community spent months arguing about it, because the implication was enormous. If Homo naledi, with a brain roughly the size of an orange, was intentionally disposing of its dead in a specific hidden location, then the behavior of mourning, the behavior of treating the dead as something more than matter, did not begin with us. It began much earlier than anyone wanted to admit. Now move forward in time. You are a Neanderthal. The word itself has become a slur in modern language, a synonym for brutish and dumb, and for a long time that is exactly how your species was treated by science. Primitive, unfeeling, instinctual. Then archaeologists found Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq. Inside it, the skeleton of a Neanderthal man, now called Shanidar I, buried roughly 65,000 years ago. Around his bones, the chemical traces of flowers, pollen from at least 8 different plant species. Paleobotanist Arlette Leroy-Gourhan analyzed the samples in the 1960s and concluded that the flowers had been intentionally placed with the body. Her finding was debated for decades. Some said the pollen was brought in by bees, or rodents, or wind. But more recent reanalysis has supported the original interpretation. And even if the flowers remain contested, what is not contested is this. Shanidar I had survived for years with severe injuries. A withered arm, a crushed eye socket, broken ribs that had healed. He was, by any measure, dependent on others. His community had kept him alive for years before he died. That is not instinct. That is care. That is the deliberate choice to protect someone who cannot protect themselves. Your Neanderthal ancestors were not brutes. They were people who took care of their old and injured. And when those people died, they marked the moment. Now move to 40,000 years ago. Anatomically modern humans, your direct ancestors. And here, the evidence becomes undeniable and also deeply strange. In Sungheir, Russia, archaeologists uncovered a burial site dating to approximately 34,000 years ago. Inside it, an older man and 2 adolescents buried head-to-head, their bodies surrounded by more than 13,000 mammoth ivory beads. Those beads had been sewn, one by one, onto clothing. The researchers calculated that producing that many beads would have required thousands of hours of labor. Thousands of hours. For objects that would be buried in the ground, never seen again. That number sits strangely in the modern brain. It implies that these humans were not just marking death. They were investing in it, pouring time, labor, and resources into a farewell for people who were no longer alive to receive it. Anthropologist Ian Tattersall has argued for decades that this kind of symbolic behavior, the use of ritual, of art, of deliberate ceremony, is the defining feature of the modern human mind. Not tool use, not fire, not even language in the narrow sense, but the capacity to treat the invisible as real, to behave as though something beyond the physical world matters. The burial at Sungheir is one of the oldest and most powerful examples of that capacity in the archaeological record. But here is where the story gets stranger. Not every ancient human buried their dead. Some burned them, some left them for birds and animals to consume, a practice called excarnation, which was deliberate, not neglectful. Some placed them on raised platforms so the elements could do their work. Some kept the skulls after the flesh was gone, painted them with red ochre, gave them plaster features, and displayed them in the home. At the ancient site of Ain Ghazal in Jordan, researchers found plastered skulls dating back 9,000 years. These were not trophies. The treatment was careful, almost loving. Faces reconstructed, eyes given shells for pupils. These were, it seems, ancestors being kept close, being kept present. Archaeologist Gary Rolifson, who led excavations at the site, described the practice as evidence of ancestor veneration, a belief, or at least a behavior, suggesting that the dead did not fully leave, that they occupied some space between gone and here, and this is where your modern life makes a sudden, uncomfortable appearance. Think about what you do when someone you love dies. You keep a photograph on a shelf, you visit a grave, you say things in your head to someone who cannot hear them, you feel their presence in a room they no longer inhabit. You describe them to people who never met them, trying to make them real again. You light a candle. You set a place at a table. You talk about them in the present tense without meaning to. These behaviors are not irrational. They are ancient. They are, in fact, among the oldest recorded human behaviors on the planet. The instinct to keep the dead present, to mark their passage, to invest in their farewell, is not something culture invented. It is something culture inherited, from a lineage so deep it predates culture itself. Psychologist Thomas Attig has described grief as the work of relearning the world. Not getting over someone, but learning how to carry them differently. And what the archaeological record shows is that this work, this relearning, this carrying, is woven into what it means to be human at the most fundamental level, possibly at a level that predates us entirely. The question that should be sitting in your chest right now is not why ancient people buried their dead with flowers or beads or painted skulls. That question has an answer. They did it for the same reason you do what you do when someone is gone. The harder question is what that tells you about the people you come from, and what it tells you about the chest pull you felt at that funeral. That was not grief arriving new. That was grief arriving old. So old it has no beginning you can point to. So old it may be the thing, more than fire, more than tools, more than language, that makes you human at all. Tonight, if you think of someone who is gone, you will feel something you cannot name. Now you know. That feeling is 300,000 years old, at least.